everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for the fourth extension session that forms part of Renew's Sustainable House Day program for 2024. My name is Laurie Dalton, and tonight I am pleased to be hosting Getting Glazing Right All About Windows, which will shine a light on this important feature of our homes. We have people tuned in from all over the country today, from a wide variety of unceded lands. I'm speaking from the traditional land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation in Melbourne. I acknowledge that the traditional owners have nurtured country, its land and waters for millennia, which has provided for countless generations. I pay my respect to elders past and present and extend this respect to all First Nations people the world over. Here at Renew, we are very grateful for the support of our sponsors, and particularly those that made Sustainable House Day and this series possible. Please consider supporting Renew as a member or by subscribing to one of our great magazines, Sanctuary or Renew. There is a link in the chat if you'd like to slip in now and peek at our offerings. Tonight we will be diving deep into everything windows, using the expertise of our wonderful panelists to dig into the pros and cons of all the great options out there. Windows are not just for views, of course. They provide light, sunlit warmth, important cross ventilation, and protection from the harsh elements, which, as we are all aware, are getting more extreme. From simple design tweaks to new technologies, we will look at consumer pitfalls, greenwashing, as well as very practical, informed advice for getting your window design on the right track from the outset. For those that have not met me before, I have worked for Renew for over 3 years, helping others achieve their sustainability goals. I enjoy unpacking the complexities of this world and our energy transition. This is the fourth session in this series of 8 topics that are designed to give you a deeper understanding of sustainable design principles, whether you are embarking on your own build, renovating, or looking for your next rental home. If you haven't already, there is still time to purchase an extension session pass. All sessions are being recorded, and in purchasing a pass, you will get access to the entire series to watch at your leisure. We'll pop the link in the chat now. I'm joined tonight by 3 special people, experts in their fields, who will all be approaching this topic from their different perspectives. First up, I would like to welcome Russell Harris, who is the Technical Manager at Australian Glass and Windows Association, AGWA. With over 20 years industry experience, Russell has a thorough understanding of fenestration, including compliance, product design, development, and testing. Russell's background in research and development means he is familiar with many of the emerging technologies, innovations, and market influences that are likely to impact the industry in the future. Russell is a leader in the technical space and an active contributor to the ongoing development of the regulatory framework affecting the window industry. Thanks so much for being with us this evening, Russell.
Thanks, Laura. It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me along.
We would also like to welcome Harley Trong, who is a regular contributor and supporter of Renew. Harley has qualifications in engineering, science, and is a certified passive house consultant and an efficiency consultant for residential and commercial projects. He is the director of Logic House and a supplier of passive house windows, and also involved in the selection, detailing, and servicing of windows. He brings a unique blend of theoretical and hands-on experience and offers many insights into the world of fenestration. We appreciate you being with us, Harley.
Thanks for having another great webinar, Laurie.
Yeah, welcome back. Both Russell and Harley were on our webinars last year, so good to have you back again. And last but by no means least, welcome Mitch Hartley. Mitch is a business development manager for Miglis, established leaders in high performance windows. They provide the highest quality Australian-made and designed double glazed windows and doors, and combine the advantages of both timber and aluminium windows to create a low maintenance, energy efficient, and thermally stable window and door system. Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you for having me, and sorry for dropping in so early.
No, okay. During our discussion, I'll be putting viewers' questions to our panel. You can put your questions into Zoom's Q&A window at the bottom of your screen as we go, and we'll get to as many of your questions as we can. Please be mindful that questions that are really specific or detailed may not be appropriate for a panel event setting. Okay, so let's get started. So historically, this session is one of our most popular, and tonight is no different. Windows are up there as one of the most expensive items of a build, and there are many factors at play in making your choices. I'm very happy to have the A team with us to help navigate this essential item. So we will start at the beginning. I'm going to start with Russell, ask you a question. At this stage, at what stage in your build should you be considering windows, and who should you consult with? Where will we find the best independent advice?
Yeah, okay. Couple of aspects of that, but I would start with as early as possible. Windows are probably going to be the most complex component of the build in terms of what they bring to the home, not just in the windows themselves, but the design and the placement of the windows. So it really comes down to starting as early as you can when you're laying down your plans, where you want the windows to face, not just for the view, but also to take advantage of passive heat or ventilation, things like that. So it's very important to do that as early as you can in the design process. And from there, where do you get information from? I would start with suppliers, reputable suppliers. They're the ones that know their products the best, and they're the ones that are going to be able to give you the best advice. Coupling with that, you have your energy consultant. Sometimes that's your architect, sometimes it's another consultant working as part of the team, the design team. Engaging with those people early on, because they'll be able to give you key advice around what works and what doesn't, and sort of spec up the home before you have to start getting quotes. You've got some idea of roughly what you're looking for, and it just makes the whole process from there just much easier. Sorry, did that cover all of the question? Or there's a couple of different components to it. I'm not sure I remember.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I've got a similar question for Harley, so he might shed a different sort of light on a similar question. So Harley, when looking at a new build, what would be your key considerations, the main things we should keep in mind from the onset?
Yeah, well, so with a new build, now the thing is, the audience. By the way, what great numbers here! 166 participants. That's a lot of people, but it's hard to tell how many of those are actually building new houses, and how many are renting, how many are just retrofitting, for example. So there's lots of considerations for each of those kinds of groups of people. But if we just talk about new houses, the main thing is it's what window system that you pick is the main thing, and it's so important. There's a lot on the market out there, and everyone has a budget. So figuring out what your budget is, and then working to the budget to find out what kind of window system. When I say window system, it's really the frame, because like glass is glass. The window frame, and there's different materials, and there's different shapes, different technologies, different ways of opening, and then add on top of that, then you have all the other options to do with the glass as well. Now, deciding early on what system that you want that's the main consideration. On the market in Australia, there are about 4 different types of window systems. From worst to best, you've got things made of aluminium, straight aluminium frames, worst, and then a step up from that is like, oh, we have a dog.
Thanks, Russell.
A step up from that is thermally broken aluminium. Okay, so yeah, and then above, about the same is PVC window frames, and then you've got timber and timber aluminium, and so about 4 different types of window systems in Australia. Maybe there are other unusual ones like steel, but really that once you've figured out what kind of look you want, the budget, and what kind of thermal I guess that's the biggest thing. You want the best thermal performance that you can afford. So that it's a tricky balance. It's like four things that you want to juggle: price, thermal performance, the look, and yeah, there was something else. Like that, yeah, there's other considerations as well. So they're the main things.
Harley, at the design phase, at the very early phase, would you consider like maybe the orientation of the house for the windows? Would that be an early consideration?
Definitely, yeah. Like the way houses are designed, windows are not something you just throw in at the very end. The way the direction of the windows face, the size of those windows, so the amount of glass you have facing a certain direction is so important. If you're in the southern states, the colder states, you definitely want north facing windows. Maybe when you go up further north where it's hotter, maybe it doesn't matter so much. But the thing is, it's such a simple thing. Everyone knows about solar passive design. Surely, all of your members, all of the people in this this panel here, they must know about that. It's good to face the windows where the sun shines, and that's north, right? But the fact is that we're not getting it. We don't get it because you look at the way the windows face in a lot of houses. It's not always north.
Mm.
There's a database that shows which direction all the windows face in all the houses in Australia, based on all those energy rating reports that you have to do for new houses. All that data is collated in one place, and I had a quick look at that, and there's no preferred direction. Windows face north, they face south, west, and east equally on an average. So it's almost random. It's almost random. It's so bad, but that getting the direction right is the number one thing.
So you want to orientate most of your windows to the north to make the most of the thermal benefits of the sun angle. But Mitch, would you like to elaborate on some of the principles of window location in the home, some of the basic principles of window location in the home, and maybe also on the difficulties with east and west windows and why they can be problematic?
Yeah, well, I suppose to touch on the solar passive design, that has been in Australia for 50 plus years, that people design their property to face the sun and eve over the window in the north. So during the summer months, it's shaded from the solar heat. I guess the problem with some locations is whether you have that opportunity to even pick which direction you point. If you're suburbia, on a smaller block, then orientation of property is a little bit difficult to deal with. So in saying that, if you do have the opportunity to do this, then north is definitely the most beneficial, because if we do look at the winter months of, the rise and sunset of the sun, we've only really got about 120 degrees of the sun coming up in the day and then going down in the afternoon. And I believe in Victoria, at least, it only gets as high as 35 degrees in the air. So it's quite easy in those colder months, if you can build north, to, install a lot of your glazing elements that way, because you can promote a lot more solar heat into the property, which then, with a lot of designs these days, they also optimise the solar mass inside of the property with concrete slabs and so forth that will retain that type of heat. So north is easy. North is easy, but I guess the taller your doors and windows get, the more difficult it also gets, because if you're trying to shade the bottom of your window in summertime, if you go up to 3 meters tall in a door, you have to have an eave that is something like, 1,500 mil wide from the property. So there's complexities in it. Seen some really smart designs lately where they separate the shading of the north window. So you might have a nice big sliding door where you can shade that, and then clerestory windows sitting above that, which can also be shaded independently. So I guess increasing your glass and your light through the north and your heat, but also cutting for it in summertime.
And a comment that I saw pop up in the chat just now around privacy obviously can limit the orientation of your windows too. I've seen some quite clever designs where north-facing windows aren't a good option, or they're facing a main road or something like that, but designers can still utilize that north light with clever design, putting windows high up near the ceiling and angling it in. So they're not your main view windows, but they're still letting that sun in. So even with limitations, with a clever design, you can still sort of make the most of those, orientating your windows well.
Sorry, Laurie, before we move on, I think it's also important to just acknowledge that that it's a very diverse country, and the climate. We have very diverse climates, and in some climates, especially up, say, Cairns, Townsville, you're really not trying to get sun into the house. You're trying to keep it out. So it's about orientation is dependent on climate. And
well, that was actually my next question for you, Russell, was exactly that topic. So have the floor. You can explain, yeah, how the climate variations, why you might pick a completely different window in Tasmania to what you pick in Darwin.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, heat goes from where it's hot to where it's not. That's basic thermal principles. When it's hot outside and you're air conditioning, the heat's trying to get in, and you want to shield yourself from that heat gain. And when it's cold outside and it's hot inside, you're trying to put a blanket on your house and keep it warm, a nice jumper. So, and the principles are, windows can be a bit mysterious when you're first researching them, because there's all this sort of scientific and kind of, U values and solar heat gains and things like that, which are, they sound very technical, but the principles are really simple. When you're trying to keep the house cool, because it's hot outside, you're in a hot climate, you want to shade the windows, you want to use windows with low solar heat gain, so glass selection. And in the when it's cold, if you're in a colder climate, you're more interested in getting that passive heat gain, and then when it comes in, keeping it in. But it's really important that if you've got a window that's calibrated or designed for a cold climate, and you put it in a hot climate, it's going to have exactly the opposite effect that you want. It's going to let the heat in and then trap it in. So you're going to create a greenhouse effect. So designing your windows or specifying your windows to suit the climate you're in is really a good place to start.
So how do you go about that, Russell? Because I think most of us who are here tonight sort of understand these basic principles, but then what do they do next? Like, how do they find which U value, or how do they go about researching what's appropriate for their climate zone? Do you want to explain a little bit about the Australian Glass Windows Association and the WERS website, how people can use that?
So we're the peak industry body for the industry. We have about 1,000 members across the country, and most of those manufacturing members publish their performance data to the WERS website, which we manage. So that's wers.net, and there's a lot of information on that website that guides it. And I think starting with the basics, if you go to, there's a link there called Energy Efficient Windows, and that's a really good place to start, because it talks through, there's really only 3 climates in Australia. If you're talking to the consultants, they're going to talk in NatHERS, I think there's 70, there's 8 A, B, C, B climate zones, and it all gets very technical very quickly. But really, you just need to look at it from a high level perspective and say, you're either in a heating climate, you're in a cooling climate, you're in a mixed climate, and those 3 principles apply. And so on the energy efficient windows website, it's literally laid out like that. There's a lot of information there that talks you through window selection based on what your outcomes are. And it's, if you're not sure what climate you're in, ask yourself because also the house design can vary the outcome. So ask yourself, am I running the heater more often or the air conditioner? What am I trying to achieve year round? Because you've got to configure the house for that overall benefit. What works in winter is going to work against you in summer, and vice versa. So you've got to kind of tune the house to the outcome you want. And it's particularly as much easier if you're doing a reno, for example, and you've lived in the house for some time, because you know how the house behaves, and what you're doing. So you can kind of use that experience to say, hey, what do I want to achieve here in terms of making the home a better place to live?
Yeah, excellent. I thought maybe Harley or Mitch, whoever's most enthusiastic, would anyone like to explain really the basics of what a U value is and some of the other uh, acronyms that people might see on the WERS website? Maybe start with U values. They're probably the most important. Mitch or Harley would.
You want me to take that, Mitch?
Yeah,
you
go
can
for
do
it.
the SHEC, yeah.
Yep, go for it.
Well, I think most people know about R values. You know, they talk about ceiling insulation being measured by an R value that, and then like a 5 is a good number for a ceiling insulation, for example. And if you've got no insulation, you get 0, and everything in between is sort of like it's on a scale, right? And same with the wall insulations, for example. So most new houses need a minimum of like an R2 or something in there. So the bigger the number, the more heat is stopped from going through that wall. The bigger the number, the better, because you want to stop heat leaving your house in winter. And likewise, in summer, you want a big number to stop the heat getting in, like being conducted through. So with windows, we don't usually use R values for windows for some reason. We use U values. It's the reciprocal. It's 1 divided by the R value. So with walls and insulation, you want a higher R value. For windows, you were looking for a lower U value. The lower, the better. And
you know, Harley, what's a sort of generally a good range to, if you were just say in the Melbourne climate, a colder climate, what would be a good range? Understanding that maybe in the warmer climates you wouldn't need as lower U value as you might need in the colder climates.
yeah. So
a goodish range for people
well,
to.
okay. So if we're I think there was a link there put to the all the U values are on a database in the WERS database, and like the best one in Australia is about a 0.8. A U value of 0.8 is the best one on WERS at the moment, and the worst one is I mean it should be banned, but like you can get 7. So 0.8 to 7, there's like a 7-fold difference between the best window and the worst window in Australia that you can buy. 7-fold. That is massive. That's massive. For Melbourne, you can't go too low. If you have enough money, like you wouldn't say to someone, "Oh, I bought the windows. The U values were too low. I'm struggling to live in this house." Okay, you can't go too low ever in a cold climate. But the range that people would get is about like anywhere between 1 and 2. Easily, you can get something affordable between 1 and 2, 3, 3 and 4. Anything above 5, I'm a personally have the opinion that we shouldn't be selling anything in this country with a U value of 5 or higher, because it means you've got single glazing in that window. A single glazed window, there's no climate in Australia where you can use a single glazing and it makes sense. It makes no sense. Probably only one place in Australia where it makes sense. It's when the outside temperature is perfect all year round and you could sleep outside under the stars. Then you don't really even need windows, and then you can use your your single glazed window, but everywhere else. So anywhere between 1 and 5 is what we should be looking for in those cooling and mixed climates. So the heating dominated and mixed climates.
And so the U value, it captures the whole window, doesn't it? It includes the frame and the glass. There's other ways of measuring just the glass or just the frame, but it's simpler for people to just focus on the U value, and that is the entire window system.
It is, yeah. It is. I don't think it should be that way. We're in this country, we're used to dumbing things down and giving things a star rating. We look down on people and think that they won't be able to understand anything else. So we lump the U value of each component of the windows into one number only. And then sure, it makes it easy to compare one window with another window, but it could be that this window has a really good frame and really shit glass. And this one here has an awesome frame, you know, and bad glass. You can't separate out what it is that you're getting. Overseas in other countries, you have different numbers, one to represent the frame, one to represent the glass, and one to represent the edge. So there's three things that are very important to a window. We just lump it into the one. Well, it's better than nothing. Having a number, it is good. If you want to like compare when you buy a car, people like know everything about cars. They know the difference between like the kilowatts, the horsepower in the car, the range, like electric vehicles. They know everything about it. You can learn about these things. Windows should be the same, but historically we've just sort of dumbed everything down.
Barbecue discussions about the various components of everyone's windows.
Well, it depends who you got at your barbecue, but like we're all window nerds here. Yeah, we love talking about this thing.
I'm sure a lot of people in the room today are also window nerds and would love to sit around a barbecue and talk about windows for hours. I certainly would. Mitch, do you want to go into a little bit about what is low E glass and a bit around glass clarity and different sort of visual transmittance of glass? Do you want to explain a bit of that?
Yep. Yep, I can do that. So it's very, very common. I mean, I've been doing this for a little bit over 10 years now, and I think the education around low E glass is much better, to the point where I think people know what the word is, but if we query, you know, their knowledge of what it actually does, then some people aren't really sure how it works. But to give you an example, from taking a non-low E clear double glazed unit and applying a low E coating to that double glazed unit, the energy efficiency in U value goes up by about 35%. So it's a pretty dramatic increase. Now, if you've been in the design game for quite a long time, you might know the old style of low E coatings, which was actually mixed into the glass. So the difference with that type of low E coating, which is called hard coat, it could be used in single glazed windows, but it can also oxidize based on being exposed to the outside. So you quite often see that it's a little bit coloured or milky or tinted. So I don't know how long it's been out for now, but there's a soft coat version that's exclusive to double glazing in between the two panes of glass, and I think it's 3% difference in clarity to clear glass. So extremely, extremely clear, extremely high performing. So low E's generally tie into a better U value. So you go frame U value, glass U value, and then the combined gives you the overall U value.
So with low E glass, just because I always found this a little bit confusing when I was researching windows, it stops the radiant heat. Is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong. So the actual heat from the light coming through the window into your home, it reduces.
It's got two characteristics which are confusing. One is the sunlight and the heat that it lets in through sunlight. That's relative to your solar heat gain coefficient. The U value is related to heat and cold transfer through the windows, not the heat from the sun.
So if you were wanting to let the warmth in, say in winter, if you've got your north facing windows and you want that heat to come into your home, does the low E glass sort of restrict the warmth coming into your home in winter when the sun's angled at the right winter?
Yeah, it can, because you have different degrees of solar heat gain in low E. So I think people sometimes think that low E is just one type of low E. It blocks out this much heat, and that's all it does. But there's a range of different solar heat gains that it can reduce. So if we're specifying for cold climate, we go with high solar heat gain, low U value, because we want the solar heat into the property and then to retain it really well. Where if we go to, Queensland, or there is a solar issue in the property where it might be a facade that's all west facing and all glass, then we do look at doing a low solar heat gain, low E glass. So you can tune it. And there's families of low E where they have very similar clarities and they can be mixed between different orientations.
But can I add to that? It's in my business, the clients always ask, yeah, should I have low E coating on the windows? So we sell nothing less. Every single window we have has a low E coating on it, and it's a soft coat. And in the numbers that I've seen, it's a 100% difference in U value. Yeah, so if you get a double glazed unit and it has no coatings on it, you might get a U value, and then you just put that one coating on, and the cost is negligible for us. You double the installation value. That's like where can you get such a massive uplift? That we just put it on every window on every job. We just put it on, and it should be a minimum to put that on, because the uplift in price is I don't know how much extra you charge for low E, Mitch, but it's like a few percent, right?
Yeah, it's only like 8%. Like it's
an 8% increase in cost for a 100. It's actually 100% difference. That the low E coatings are so good these days, and it doesn't stop the heat getting in. It lets the heat come through as light, and when that heat hits your furniture, it turns into like radiant heat. It stops that heat getting back out. It's like a one-way filter. It is so good that we should be banning single glazing, and we should be mandating low E coatings on any climate that needs a heating component.
Just expanding on that also, like Mitch, you made the point, like the clarity of the low E coatings today. The early generation low E's were pretty bit of a blunt instrument compared to where the technology has gone today. We've got spectrally selective, triple silvers, all these sort of things that really mean that what you get is effectively a clear piece of glass, but to the long wave radiation, it's pretty much opaque, so that heat's not coming in or getting out; it's being reflected. The visible light transmittance and the solar heat gain and the way they work together, older generation low E's, as you increase the low E, you reduce the amount of visible light or change the color. So a lot of the early generations were like at a blue tint because they were reflecting the red heat carrying light waves. But as the technology has evolved, especially in the last sort of 10 years, that problem's sort of gone away. The glasses are really an engineered component. It's not just glass. It's very much a manufactured, engineered item in a way that's never been before. So this is great innovation for the planet. It's like if we can make glass work for us, then let's have more of it.
Great. Well, for my own project at home, my windows had I thought I didn't want any low E because I wanted the heat warmth of the sun to come into the house, and I was told they all have low E and you have to have it kind of thing, but I found I could still getting a little bit of warmth, enough coming in, like the inside temperature was actually maintained just how I wanted it, so I was very happy.
You do find the really high performing units, you do see a drop in solar heat gain. So if you're after U value and highly insulative glass, it does come at a sacrifice to solar heat gain, and it's just something you have to find that balancing act. But that's where you talk to your energy consultant, who can play with different options and model the impact of that on the home, in terms of the energy use and the comfort of the home. So that's what the software does, and you leave that to the experts. That's what they do, and yeah.
And what you've all said is that there's variations in so there's options there. It's not sort of one choice. You either have it or you don't have it. There's variations that you can select depending on.
Yeah, there should definitely be options. If there's not, then probably just selling what they want to sell you. So you just got to be careful of that.
And the layer of the glass that the coating is put on also has an effect, because you can put it on a certain layer of glass and it helps for the colder climates, or you can put it on another layer that helps in the warmer climates. So you kind of, the problem is a lot of window manufacturers don't say which layer it's on. So that's I guess you need to ask what that is if you've got
So how would you frame that question if you were wanting to ask?
Well, maybe if you just Google which layer. So if you have a double glazed unit, the outside layer is layer 1, the side that faces the street. The other side of that piece of glass is layer 2. And then on the second bit of double glazing, that side facing the street is layer 3. And then this face of the glass facing the room is layer 4. Then for so like Canberra, Melbourne, anywhere where you need to turn the heater on, you want that low E coating on surface 3. Surface 3, and that is the best. If you're in, say, even Brisbane, they turn the heaters on, don't they? So probably take Cairns and above, where it's sort of always nice and warm. You probably want it on layer 2 to keep the heat out a bit more. So
the way it works is exactly like a mirror. We all see mirrors, and it's silver. That's the material on the coating. It's got some other additives to try and protect the silver from oxidization and things like that. But a mirror is a very thick coating of silver. But a low E coating, especially a soft coat low E, is exactly the same. Well, not exactly the same, but generally the same principle, except the thickness of the coating is less than 1 wavelength of visible light. So it lets the visible light come through because it's so thin, but it blocks the long wave radiation, the really heat carrying frequencies. So which way you face your mirror is which way the heat gets reflected.
Yeah, I like that way of thinking about it, and thinking about it as a mirror that's reflecting the heat where you want it to go. So Harley, I wanted to ask this question for you. When I was researching windows, many companies told me that they were 100% Australian made, but when I got into the detail, the frame material was often manufactured overseas, and in particular, the glass was usually manufactured overseas. The frame and glass are then configured in Australia, so put together, and then labelled Australian made, even though most of the materials are manufactured overseas. So I just thought I'd get some of your thoughts on that. So I think there's only one glass company in Australia, that Australian made glass company. So why is that, and what kind of questions can people ask to sort of get clarity on where the materials are coming from?
yeah, so there's one glass fabrication plant where they make glass from scratch, from soda, lime, whatever else they put into that. And that's Viridian. Viridian has one plant in Australia because it costs many millions of dollars to have one. There's only one. And but then they would make glass, and then they would on-sell it to other companies who would take that glass and turn it into a double glazed unit, for example. So they would say that is kind of Australian made, sort of, but yeah, well, I mean, that's 100% Australian made. But then if you want high performance glass, you want those low E coatings that we were just talking about, for example. Well, you have to import that. We don't have that kind of technology in Australia to do all that. So we a lot of companies will, and even Viridian will import some of their glass. They will make some and they will import some of it. The glass that they're importing, it's stuff that they're not making here because they don't have the scale of it. So low E coatings and low iron glass that's super clear, that doesn't have the green tint in it. Some of this stuff, it's imported, and then it's turned into insulated glass units. The frames as well. If you're talking about PVC, I don't know if anyone's making PVC frames in Australia. I think the majority are coming from overseas. So often in Europe or in China, they will make long sections of PVC frames and they'll just ship those over here. And local companies will take those and then cut them, join them, and then put glass into them and sell them in Australia. So in a way, 100% Australian window, 100% Australian made windows, it is possible, but I think that there are maybe there's a bit of misleading advertising there saying that it's Australian made when it's Australian labor using Australian owned maybe, but using ingredients. It's the same as when you buy a jar of peanut butter. Sometimes it's got like a measure of how Australian made it really is. You know, I think we need a bit of that. But I might add that it's always good to buy local. From a sustainability point of view, you've got less carbon miles if you're buying something that was made here that doesn't have to be sent from overseas. But sometimes it's not that bad to buy from overseas. So my company, everything we make is made overseas. It's 100% un-Australian, 100% non-Australian made. And I have no problems telling that to my clients because I am importing products that from other countries that have much higher technical capabilities than what we have in Australia. These windows are, I mean, it's like 20 years in the future compared to what we do in Australia. Okay, and I'm bringing them into the country, and I'm creating demand for these kinds of windows, creating demand for it. And when more and more people buy these kinds of windows, then local fabricators can then start making them locally. PVC windows used to be all imported, and then workshops started making those windows here locally. It's a trend to create the demand first, and then you can build the thing locally. Same thing happened with say electric vehicles. Everything's imported. Who knows in the future we might start manufacturing components at least, batteries, for example. PV, for example, it's all made overseas, but there's talk of like local fabrication because there's so much demand for it. Hemp, for example, hemp hurd used to all come from overseas, like the Netherlands and other places, and now there's enough demand that I think we're growing it locally. So buying Australian is great, but buying overseas with the idea that you're gonna create demand and then set up a local industry, then it's not all bad. It's not all bad.
Mitch, do you have a different perspective on that?
Well, I guess we're the absolute opposite of that. So, if we could do a green and gold window, we probably would, but all of our, products are designed by us, manufactured by us, engineered by us. So right down to thermal simulations, they're all done in-house and then passed on to Agua and WERS when we're happy with the result. But the only thing we import is hardware. So we've got a hardware schedule with Winkhaus in Germany who fabricate hardware especially for our system. Because one of the things I think we find with a lot of the European hardware is, and we've tested over the years because we've been making an alley-clad system here for 25 years, which everyone thought we were crazy to do. And that was double glazed back in those days, Australian made. But, testing the hardware around the world, stainless steel is the only thing we'll ever touch now when it comes to hardware. So even our German hardware manufacturers do a special run for us, which is stainless steel, and we're about the only person in the world who use it now. Otherwise, it's galvanized and powder-coated hardware. But otherwise, the timber's sourced through PEF certified timber industry, so all tied into sustainable Australian standards. Obviously, they're not doing what they should do at the moment with the shutdown of Victorian forestry, but, it's as green as you can possibly get.
Mitch and Harley, I think you have very similar windows. I don't know if you want to hold up a little example of what your window looks like, but I think Mitch and Harley, we both have very similar windows. They're aluminium on the outside, wood on the inside. Harley's got one up
You did ask me to bring this along and I didn't, so
that's all right. They're quite similar. So You can
Oh,
see, do we want to
well,
spotlight Harley? There we go.
oh, they're not exactly similar. I mean, they both. So this has German origins. This is quite a common window in overseas. Like, look, 20 years ago, this was a standard thing. This is 20 years old over in Europe. This is so old. This is nothing special over there, but over here, it's like the best window in Australia kind. That's the difference. That's the difference. And it's mostly wood.
And the
The bit
wood,
that's
I think both Mitch and Harley, is your wood Australian sometimes, or
No, it's
it's
all
over.
overseas grown, but we only source from FSC certified forests, so managed forests. They're not cutting down
Mm.
um yeah, and forests, and they're not clearing out the orangutans. They're not enslaving people to do stuff. So we only do FSC certified, nothing less.
And it's getting quite difficult to source Australian wood these days anyway. So Mitch, you do still use Australian wood?
Yeah, we do. We use all Australian species. It was Vic Ash until fairly recently. Just the variability in the remaining stock is not. It's a bit too risky to make windows with, in our opinion. So then we've moved to Tassie oak, which is surplus amounts of Tassie oak coming from Tassie. But all hardwood, it just gives us a lot more peace of mind. All regrowth forestry, sustainability wise, it's on, I think, an 80-year cycle. So at that period of time, they tend to cut down that type of hardwood because it starts to be negative carbon release and cause a few issues. But also, it's just a really nice timber. We've obviously been pitched a lot of different timber to be imported through different sustainable sources because PEFC certified owns different forestry around the world. But I think while it's green and it's local, it's our best decision, really. I mean, even the aluminium these days is done under the greenest billet we can get, which is, hydroelectricity out of New Zealand. So we're going through the process at the moment of looking for carbon neutrality through the business. Very difficult in manufacturing, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Our most popular timber is pine. So pine is fast growing. It's plantation timbers. Like this window, it looks like sort of this. So when you put aluminium, like the thing that Mitch's company and mine have in common is that it's a timber window with aluminium on the outside. So the aluminium protects the timber. So you're not forced to use timbers that have to stand up to the weather. So we use sustainable timbers because actually our most popular one, they make the wood from smaller pieces of wood, offcuts. They get offcuts and they finger joint them to make long bits of wood. Stuff that would normally just get burnt or just chucked out, they will turn them into long, straight bits of wood and and yeah, and turn those into windows.
So what are the
there's
benefits of doing the windows like that with aluminium on the outside, wood on the, because there are various different ways you can have your windows. You can have fully wood, you can have fully aluminium, and you can have UPVC. So what are the different benefits of your style of window?
yeah, so I can talk about it a little bit, Mitch, and then you can maybe add to it.
Yeah. I'll jump in after.
So just the material is so important because the window is there to stop the heat flow, stop the warmth of the house getting out, or the heat getting in through the frames. The frame is so important. So the aluminium is at the moment the most popular kind of window in Australia. Aluminium windows. It's just it shouldn't be that way, but it is. Now, aluminium, the thermal conductivity, the amount of heat that flows through aluminium, the material, is over 1,000 times, almost 2,000 times more than wood. Think about that. A piece of wood and a bit of aluminium, the aluminium would conduct 2,000 times more heat through it than wood. PVC is sort of it's way better than aluminium. But it's about, I think it's four times worse than wood. So wood is a natural kind of an insulator. So why not make a window out of it? And in the old days, all windows were made of wood. if you go back long enough, every window was made of wood. But if you just make a straight window out of wood and expose it to the Australian UV, the sun, the rain, they deteriorate, they rot. They have to be repainted or recoated every 5 years. No one wants to do that on the weekends. So wood windows have a downward trend in that. People still make them. People like the look of them, but you're getting less and less of it. And so timber aluminium, I think is the best compromise. And I think Mitch's company is great in that they figured out the same recipe, that aluminium on the outside of wood is the best. The other one was aluminium. The other problem is aluminium itself is very an energy intensive material. Sure, it's recyclable, but it has a much larger carbon footprint than like a harvested forest that you cut down, the carbon stored in the window. And the final one was PVC. But look, Mitch can talk about PVC. He's got some nice good views.
I can read where we're getting the marching orders on trying to sell windows. So I'll just say this: life cycle assessments, which have been done through Europe and a lot of Australia, they rate the lifespan of a window. Clad systems have got the highest lifespan of any window out there. PVC has the least. You've then got aluminium windows, and then you've got timber windows if they're maintained. So I think the choice for, an investment in a window is lifespan. So pick the one that's going to last you the longest and provide the best thermal efficiency. And I think looks like we probably should move on from trying to sell our
I think people do want to know about the various different materials. So I think it still is interesting to get your thoughts on that. But yes, keeping in mind that there's no one here representing UPVC, and they might sort of advocate in a different way if they were here.
Well, I could carry the flag.
And
I could carry the flag for PVC if you want. I mean, like so.
We might move on to a different topic at this point. But yeah, definitely people should still sort of do their research on it. I think it's still one of the choices.
I think we could sum it up to say that there are different materials and they have different benefits. Longevity is certainly a big issue, but yeah, sorry, we'll move on. But I think research is important into what you want.
So I guess this sort of leads on to what I wanted to go into a bit more detail on is, are there any other examples of sort of greenwashing or misleading information in the window industry that consumers should avoid? Russell?
Look, it's easy to make claims in marketing, and no doubt everyone's always trying to push something. And so I guess understanding what you're being told in terms of the information that's being presented to you is really important. So that really, in my opinion, you need to have a relationship with these suppliers. You need to get to know them. It's not just a simple transaction where you say, I want this, and you get it, you pay for it, and job done. If you really want the best outcome, and keeping in mind what you purchase, you're going to live with for some time, really doing your research and working with your suppliers to understand how they can help you is really important. I would urge people to look for verifiable claims, and I'd suggest maybe if we put a link to the wers.net website up again, it's a good way to verify that the claims anyone's making are independently verified. And sometimes we have international products which are rated to different systems, and they can sound similar numbers. But the AFRC, the Australian Fenestration Rating Council, provides the standardised method for how we measure windows for our climate. Some of these other systems are based on different climate conditions, so they're not suitable for our harsh environment. And so, going to WERS, finding the window, looking for suppliers who can back up their claims.
Yeah, so not everyone is WERS certified, so that's a good starting point. It's
not a level playing field. Yeah, if one company is paying for Australian standards testing and getting an Australian rating and becoming a member of AGWA and the Australian Glass and Window Association, and another company is not doing that, then they're selling their product as if it was somehow Australian standard, but they never tested it. It's not really a level playing field. But I've seen plenty of examples of greenwashing that goes beyond that. So I've got two examples here that I want to just discuss. Is that there's we all know and love double glazing or even triple glazing, and we know the benefits of it. But there are some products out there that claim to be energy efficient, but it's only made with one piece of glass. So it's one piece of glass with a coating on it, and they claim that it is somehow superior than a single piece of glass. But if you look at the numbers, this is why you need to understand what a U value is. So if you look at just the glass on its own, a single piece of glass has a U value of 5. Okay, remember 5 is it's bad, right? 5. Compared to a double glaze unit, you're looking at maybe like 1.5 or 2. There's a twofold or more difference, or fourfold difference. But then there are the companies selling goes under different names, but it always seems to have the word comfort in it, like comfort glass, comfort this, comfort that. It is a single piece of glass with a coating on it, and the U value is 3.5. So you're going from 5 down to 3.5 when you could have gone from 5 down to 1.5. So when someone makes a claim, yeah, just ask for the number and do your sums. The second sort of greenwashing I've seen is with aluminium windows that are thermally broken. So aluminium itself, we know that it's a bad kind of a window because it just lets all the heat out. So they would do a what's called a thermal break. So they would make the window almost like 2 halves of aluminium, and in the middle is a piece of plastic, about 1 centimeter. So they would separate the outside skin from the inside skin of the frame, and it's separated by that insulator, which is the plastic, right? Fair enough. That is a step in the right direction to make an aluminium window a lot better. Problem is, you look at the way that they install those windows, you look at the manufacturer's installation instructions, that window is installed in the brick cavity where it's cold, and the inside skin is exposed to the outside air. You've created this thermal separation between the inside skin, which is warm, and the outside skin, which is cold. But you've just shot yourself in the foot. You put that window out so that the whole thing gets cold. It is an absolute scam that anyone would buy that window thinking that they're getting a certain U value, but when they install it, they're not going to get that U value. You're pretty much wasting your money getting
Sorry,
that.
let me see if I've got this right. Because the window is sort of sitting on sort of the outside of the brick, it's sort of on the edge skin of your house.
It's on the outside of the insulation layer. Yeah, the insulation layer is your wall, the timber stud wall, which is insulated with fiberglass bats, say. Then you've got this gap, and then you've got the brickwork. They put the window in where the gap is, which is cold.
With thermally broken, and even with double glazing, that window is still fundamentally going to be cold. Or have some of the temperature of the outside more so than if it was sort of further in.
Yeah, the glass would do its job, but that window frame is compromised. You've pretty much wasted your money.
I really would like to clarify that point in terms of this is, I guess, an inherent element of design. And if you take the wrong product and put it in the wrong location, you're going to get adverse outcomes. If a properly designed window is used in it as it's intended to be, the thermal break is in the right location, it will work as designed. The scenario you've discussed there is probably not to say it doesn't happen, but it's really putting the wrong window in the wrong location. If it's not designed for that cavity, then it's not going to perform. It's going to perform like you said.
Well, the manufacturers should update their documents. If they don't think it should be installed that way, then they should update their documents.
So we have a one question from the audience we can move into the audience questions a little bit now, is exactly on that topic. So they've written, I understand it would be best practice to replace an 80s aluminium single glazed window, which was going to be shocking, with double glazed thermal break window. But is there any benefit to replacing with a modern aluminium frame window with a low E glass? So that would just, I think, not be a double glazed. It would just be maybe a better quality single glazed aluminium frame window, but with low E glass. When they say better, I think the benefit's always going to be better to do double glazed, but, or in most cases, but affordability, I think if someone's sort of trying to find a better product that would improve their situation but be within a price range, would that still be a good option, or what would you say to that?
Who are you talking to?
I've got a personal anecdote that kind of might shed some light on that. I mean, before I had a window company, I was just a consumer. I lived in an old house that had steel windows with single glazing, and they were wet when I woke up in the morning, and they had mold growing on them, and they would never seal properly. And I said, this is enough. I'm going to replace these ugly windows. So I replaced them all, and I got aluminium windows, not thermally broken, just normal aluminium windows. This is before I like became a window nerd. We all have our stories of how we became window nerds, but so mine was I changed the windows. It had double glazing in it, but it had just a really bad frame. And in hindsight, I should not have changed them at all. They instead of the whole window getting wet, the glass stayed dry because they were double glazed, but the window frames were all wet in the morning. Same problem. Curtains got moldy. All the timber around got wet, and
how long ago was that, Harley?
It's more than 10 years ago.
Yeah,
okay.
I think windows have come a long way since that experience. There's probably windows still like that on the market, but honestly, there are much better options than just a standard aluminium frame window. There's a lot of technology that's been put into design around shielding the aluminium in exactly the same way your product does. It's effectively an aluminium clad timber window. Well, there's also timber, shielded aluminium windows. It's exactly the same principles, where you've got the window reveal is actually positioned so that it provides that shielding effect, so it insulates the aluminium from the internal air. So the same principles. It's really horses for courses. I guess these products hit at different price points. So it's
but what I wanted to say was that I spent money to upgrade those windows there was a slight improvement. Okay, it was better, but the problem is that whoever I sold that house, I moved house. The person that bought that house is unlikely to then change those windows again. It's called the lock-in effect. If you're going to renovate and you do a half-baked renovation where you don't buy decent windows, it means that you're not going to get the full benefit of a proper thermally broken double glazed window. But then for the life of those windows, you're not going to upgrade them again. And when you sell the house, the next person is not going to upgrade windows that look almost new. So you're better off not changing them, or change half of your windows in the more important rooms to something decent. And then when you have more money, do the other half, or take advantage of some of these interest-free loans that are out there from government assistance programs. There's other ways to do it, but I would advise not going for a half-assed window.
So for households that are, I might give this one to Mitch. For households that are maybe saving their pennies to put in a really good double glazed window, or if you're in a rental property, are there any short-term fixes to improve the insulation of your windows? Such someone in the Q&A has mentioned putting bubble wrap over the windows. Is that something that's worth doing? there's other sort of products you can buy to just sort of put over your single glazed window that can sort of improve the thermal efficiency somewhat. There's another question regarding retrofits to single glazing. It would be expensive to replace with double glazing. So can a similar result be achieved using films and or dressings?
I spoke to someone recently who did a DIY where they
That was my question.
oh, all right. But
Yeah,
sorry.
I'll take those ones. So look, I guess, I mean, I'm relatively biased, but I'll try and keep neutral in this. They will create different effects to your window, but you really have to look at the installation of the window first and how that existing window is even installed in your property. If it's installed with a few nails through the side, no sealing between the window and stud work, then there's not a whole lot you can really do other than pulling off architraves, stuffing insulation in between your windows, what I call Frankensteining your window to try and mimic a double glazed window. Obviously, it comes with probably a cheaper solution, but what I tend to find with that type of thing is, if you add increased glazing weight to a window that's not built for 2 panes of glass, which I think it's nearly, 22 kilos for a double glazed unit, you're going to put that into a window that might have been there for 15 years on the original hardware. I reckon you'll open that a couple of times and you'll either never be able to open it again or the thing's going to fall out of your house. And I think to go through the rigmarole of doing all those types of things, although it is cheaper, the result, if you tested it to, the energy efficiency and the overall result, it'd follow. The price point would match the efficiencies of even doing it. I know there's a lot of people out there who go for a secondary glaze, we tend to call that. And it's affordability and really, apartments. So if you're on anything higher than a scaffold can go, you kind of don't have much choice other than hiring a crane to lift windows from the street up to your property. So yes, there are reasons to do it. I think sometimes you have to. It could be because of your situation or your budget. And it's got to be better than what's currently there, if I can say that, if you're trying to do the right thing.
If you're stuck with the windows you've got, so for example, you're renting, the single biggest thing you can do is to fill up cracks, gaps, and air leakage. Air infiltration is the biggest killer. We know that intuitively we put those sort of sausages under our doors. You can buy sort of like stick-on window seals from companies like Raven and or even Bunnings sell products that you can use to improve the air infiltration. That's probably the easiest thing you can do to an existing window. But beyond that, I think, as Mitch said, there's limited options that work for any length of time anyway.
I'd like to just add that there's always, you can put an external blind to block the sun in summer, and you can put heavy curtains inside your house, or sort of other ways you can insulate your windows and manage that if you can't actually change the window fabric yourself. Heavy curtains and external blinds can be very
I spoke to someone recently who told me their story of what they did, a DIY job where they got, it's almost like cling film, Glad wrap. They got a roll of it from Bunnings. It must be like a thicker version of it. And he said he put double-sided tape around the frame of his window, and then he put that film over it, and then he sort of heated it up with a hairdryer, and it kind of stretches, and then it becomes absolutely clear. You can't see it. And that just adds another an air pocket, I guess.
It comes in double glaze, well, triple glaze type scenario in the US. It's called thin triple, I believe they call it. But the interlay between the two double glaze units are that type of thing where it's stretched. Rain, and the U values of that's actually pretty good. It's just one of those things that doesn't exist in Australia, unfortunately, but reduces the weight of your window dramatically, and they use it quite a lot in the US.
There's another technology that's just coming out. It's called vacuum insulated glazing. So we typically talk about double and triple glazing. We're talking about two pieces of glass with either air or an inert gas in the middle. these systems, they're incredibly thin, but they actually pump the air out from in between. Now, there are some compromises because you have to put these little posts in, these clear posts, to stop the glass collapsing in on itself. But they're for a slight compromise in aesthetics, they actually produce a really good outcome with basically the same weight as single glazing. So they give double glazing performance without the weight compromise. So there's no need to upgrade frames and things like that. So that's proving to be a very good retrofit option. And look, it's an emerging technology. It's a little bit untested in this country particularly, but these options exist, and yeah, I encourage people to look into them.
Russell, could you quickly, I saw one comment earlier around argon gas, sometimes that you fill between the two sheets of glass, you might fill argon gas as well. My understanding, there's a few different types of gas you can use. Just quickly, what's the benefit to that? Do you have to have it?
So no, you don't have to have it, but it definitely helps. The thing I'll say about gas inserts is they're an inert gas. They stop that convection current within the unit itself. So they really do improve the insulation, but it comes down to the quality of the unit. These things are sealed systems, so it depends on the quality of the seal. And if the seal's doesn't last long enough, your gas is gonna leak out. So a poor quality IGU, it might have argon fill, for example, and there's a few different types. Argon's probably the most common. You want to buy an AS 4666 compliant and accredited, unit, or from an accredited supplier, because those people have tested their unit to show that it lasts. That's an Australian standard, and it's testing to Australian UV exposure and heat and cycles and things like that relate to our climate. Some of the, I guess not all, but some systems, they're not designed for those conditions. And the benefit of the gas might be lost over time because it'll leak out. So just a little point, look for a supplier who is AS 4666 accredited. It is actually a mandatory requirement under the Australian standards, but I guess, that's possibly an area for people to pay attention to around the quality of the IGUs they're purchasing.
And these gases are not greenhouse gases, are they? They're quite safe
They're
gases.
completely inert. If they do leak out, they're not refrigerant gases like in our fridges and things like that. They don't hurt anything. They're naturally occurring in the atmosphere. In fact, that's how they're created or manufactured. They're just extracted from the air that we breathe.
Argon is in the air that we breathe. I think it's I can't remember how many percent is argon in air already. And the other
London gas. So
yeah. And the other gases were krypton and xenon. But argon is like the most commonly used one. It's the cheapest one. Like, how much extra do you charge? Is it even an extra cost, Mitch? Is it?
We can't get without argon these days.
Yeah,
because we use Viridian and Oceanic glass, and they're under 4666. All of their glass units are argon filled. I think you gain about a 0.2 U value from doing argon.
Yeah,
it's no brainer.
I've seen like a 20% lift in the performance of the glass unit when you have argon in there. And the other gases were if you've got, see, krypton and xenon work better when you have thinner gaps between your layers of glass. If you have, for example, a window that you want to retrofit a new bit of glass. Let's say you've got an old heritage window, and you want to take the old bit of glass out, put a new double glazed unit in. You don't have a lot of space to work, so krypton and xenon work well in those cases because they perform best when there's a tiny 9mm gap in between the two.
So maybe also another question, which I might ask Russell to start with is, if you've maxed out on your build and you're trying to look at ways to reduce your costs, what are some ways you can you sort of think about windows to optimize your spending, I guess? Like maybe around sizing, or there's a question here from the audience. Which windows do we focus on if we can't afford to replace them all? Do we do the ones that face a certain direction, or the ones in your main living areas? Any advice on how people could yeah, cut back their costs and do it more efficiently?
I guess it's a very personal choice as to how you go about that. If you're only replacing some of the homes, windows in the home, personally, I'd probably focus on the living areas because that's probably where I spend most of the time. And in bed at night, I'm under a blanket, so it probably doesn't matter quite so much. But then, depending on the home you live in, you might find it intolerably cold at night, and so you might want to do the bedrooms. It really, I guess, it depends on the lived experience and what you think will work for you. In terms of maximizing bang for your buck, I suppose, things like low ease. If you're coming from a low base, if you're starting from just a standard aluminium single glazed window and you want to improve it in a cost effective way, substituting a low E is a great start, but it is just a start. In fact, I think that's probably the baseline of where windows start these days. I don't think we'd still have aluminium single glaze windows, clear single glaze on the market, but they're not really sold very much. They low E's is a minimum. Double glaze is kind of the norm in most states, particularly the southern states. Look for probably, if your aluminium windows tend to be the cheaper option, but there can be compromises. They also are the longest lasting, I suppose, most durable option. So there are most recent innovations in window design. There's a few brands out there. I won't mention any brand names because I don't want to be biased in terms of the device, but certainly those sort of inline reveal type products where the window shielded by timber or thermally broken aluminium, they probably offer the best bang for your buck. If you can afford better, like Harley said, you're going to live in this home for a while, presumably, or you're going to sell it and you're going to want to get that return on your investment. If you can afford it, upscale the windows because you will reap the benefits every single day you're there. But that said, I completely acknowledge not everyone's got endless budget to spend on their homes, and sometimes everything's a compromise.
Russell, are there any guides out there on the on the recommended window sizes that how to size your window?
Sizing is a really interesting topic because you'll hear lots about people saying glass is the worst thing in the house and you should have less of it. That's not inaccurate at the surface level, but windows do a lot more than just that. Just act as an insulator. If you've got better windows, you can go bigger. And generally, windows are and doors is what connects us to the outside. And in Australia, we've got such a lovely climate. We live outdoors more than we're in most of the year in most of the country. So, we'd like to feel connected to the outdoors. We have one of the largest house sizes in the world. In fact, Canberra is the largest houses in the world, and we have some of the biggest glazed areas in the world because of that natural affinity to the outdoors that we have as Australians. So windows is what connects us to the outside. So it's an interesting topic. The other thing about window size is ventilation. The biggest thing you can do when you come home from work and the house is hot, what do? You open the windows and you let the breeze flow through. It's the single biggest thing you can do to offset unwanted heat gain. It's also really important for a healthy home to reduce pollutants in the air, carbon dioxide and mold spores and all those sort of things that, we like to live in a fresh air. And again, windows is what delivers that for our homes and gives us that connection. So I don't think it's a big popular to say smaller windows are better, but there are times. One of the things you can do that Mitch spoke about earlier was, especially west-facing windows, having them floor to ceiling is not always a great idea. But you might want to bring the sill up a little bit because as the sun's setting down, that shade, that veranda or the eave you have there, it's pretty early in the day. The sun's going to be on the lower part of the window, and it's just going to climb up right through the afternoon. So if you're in a cold climate, that might be great because it warms the house up for the evening. But if that's causing an overheating problem, one of the things you can do for that is either extend the veranda or bring the sill of the windows up a little bit so that you're not getting that overheating effect.
Yeah, not everyone sort of has a small budget though. I've seen customers who have plenty of money for swimming pools and marble bench tops, 5-car garages, and yet not have enough money for decent windows. So sometimes it's not that there's not enough no appetite, but it's maybe people's priorities are more on other bling items than windows.
Well, we're starting to run out of time now, and there's still a lot of questions we haven't got to. We could talk a lot more about condensation and bushfire zones, you know, fire windows that are rated for bushfire. There's a lot more we could go into. I'm just going to ask a couple more questions. I think this one we can answer quite quickly around double glazed and triple glazed windows. What are the pros and cons or performance benefits of going triple glaze? I think Mitch might get you to answer that one.
Yeah, so when we simulate a cross-section of a window between double glazed and triple, the only real benefit would come from doing a low E triple glazed unit, even if it's just one layer. Because funny enough, a triple glazed non-lower unit performs worse than a low E double glazed unit. Not by much, but you would expect that by adding a third pane in there, you'd get more than a double glazed unit. So look, I think it's only when you get up to, you know, low E triples, and then you also get double low E triples. But the one thing you have to be wary of with that type of system is that your solar heat gain and your visual light transmittance goes down every time. So quite often, even before I jumped on this meeting tonight, one of the profiles that was specified there would have been a double low E, where the visual light transmittance was 0.4. So 60% of the light wasn't getting through the window. So, you know, it's that type of glass that's similar to a welder's helmet or something like that, where you might be doing it for the overall energy efficiency of retaining it, but the visual aspect of the window is detrimental in that respect. So look, there is a big increase when you go to low E triples, double low E triples in energy efficiency, but
is it something you need in Australia's general climate? Like maybe if you're building in the snow, you might want to, you know, go to get the top quality windows that are really going to, you know, keep you warm. But is that triple glaze something that you would normally need to do in Australia?
I'd say no to that, and we do a lot of alpine, like we do, you know, Mount Buller all through Jindabyne, and even to the point where we have to use special double glaze units for high altitude so they don't decompress and fail. But I wouldn't say it was absolutely necessary. It would certainly help, but the way I kind of look at triple glazing and glazing weights, you're really just increasing the glass weight of your window by 50% and expecting it to be, you know, whatever size you want it and to last a long time.
And then having your house frame has got to hold up that weight, so it's going to add an extra design.
Yeah, I mean, it's really complex.
Yeah.
Can I jump in and give Logic House's opinion on triple glazing? Because we sell a lot of it, but we also sell double glazing. We leave it up to the client to decide. But when we do it, the glass has twice the insulation value compared to a double glazed unit. So the U value goes from about 1.2 for a double glazed unit to 0.6 for a triple glazed unit. It's double, but the price jump is 10%. Okay, so you're paying 10% more for a 100% improvement in the glass insulation value. And even our best triple glazed unit, if I convert it to an R value, it's an R value of about 1.5. That triple glazed unit, this is a triple glazed unit behind here, that has an insulation value of 1.5 compared to the walls in most people's houses, it's R2.5. This window here is awesome, but it's still nowhere near as good as an average wall in Australia. So to say that this kind of window is overkill, say in the Canberra climate, this is perfect for the Canberra climate. You don't have to go to the snow.
On really extremely low U values is a lot of the time people consider the absolute extreme of their season, whether it's the extreme of winter the extreme of summer. You've still got another, 6 or 8 months around that year where a high U value will stop any warm or cold air from entering your property as well. So I think for people who have lived in a highly efficient, double glazed house, well insulated, myself, I do it up here. I've just got an old 80s brick property, but sometimes on a warm day, I'll walk out of the house at 12 o'clock and go, oh, geez, it's warm out here. And it'd actually be really nice to have that in my house, but because of the high efficiency of the U value, keeping out that natural warmth from my property, I might walk out and go, oh.
Then you want to be opening your windows and doors.
Yeah,
and-
you want to
exactly.
open your windows in that case.
Yeah.
So it's better to control the heat flow by shutting your house up when you want to keep the heat out or the warmth in, and then opening them up to then transfer that heat. If I was living in a really hot climate, say the far north of Queensland, where it's hot all the time, do you think it's better to have single glazing, double glazing, or triple glazing in such a hot climate? Say you go up, say Darwin, where it's like 30 degrees the whole day and night. Do you think it's better to have single glazing, double, or triple glazing?
Russell, what
if you're trying to keep your air conditioning in. Sorry, I think we're starting to get close to wrapping up. I thought we could maybe just squeeze in one more tiny question, because I've seen quite a few comments around sound. I personally live on a main road and want to put some double glazed windows in those bedrooms that face the main road, as probably more of a motivating factor than even the insulation factors. So maybe Russell, could you talk a little bit to the sound benefits and can you, is there can you get windows that are good for sound but not good for thermal, or do you just get both in one package?
Yep, 100%. So it's a misnomer to say double glazing performs better and acoustically than single glazing, because it's about the amount of mass, the amount of glass you're putting in the way, whether it's 2 panes or 1 pane. So there's 2 things that we advise to improve acoustic ratings. The first one is better seals. Seal the window. If you've got a sliding window with worn out brush seals, they're going to leak lots of air around the glass. It doesn't matter what glass you put in it, the sound's just going to come around. But when it comes to the frame selection and the glass selection, more mass is better. And the thing about sound is that we've got a cross section of frequencies. So we've got from high pitch to low pitch, and a particular glass might resonate at a certain frequency. So there are specific products out there that use glass of 2 different thicknesses. So they resonate at different frequencies and cancel each other out. They also have thicker interlayers, which acts as a shock absorber to the sound. So glass, there are many glass options out there. Coupling those with a double glazed unit is going to get the best of both worlds in terms of attenuating any sound as well as any heat or insulation, etc. So whatever you want, there's a solution out there for
it. There is a measure. There's a measure for the amount of sound that is blocked, and it's like measured in dB, so like 30 dB, 40 dB, 50 dB. The higher the number, the more that the sound is blocked from going through the glass.
It's an RW. So that's what, if you're talking to window people and you're asking the question, what is your window rate to? It's an RW. Just be mindful if you're in if you're trying to attenuate traffic noise, the RW rating's actually calibrated around sort of mid-frequency, but traffic noise is a low rumble and it requires a different kind of solution. So if it's traffic noise you're trying to attenuate, ask for RW plus CTR. Maybe we can put that in the chat. But it's a traffic noise. It's a specific measurement for traffic noise. So just to make that clear. We do have a lot of information on this on our website. If you go to agua.com.au, you can search for pretty much anything you want to know about windows and doors. There's lots of information there. I can put that in the chat for everyone, but it's really simple, agua.com.au. Lots of information about all of the topics we've covered tonight and a whole heap more. Everything windows, it's all there.
Great, Russell, thanks. Is there one key takeaway before I wrap up? Is there one key takeaway you'd like to leave everyone with today, Russell?
Think about it. I guess if you could do any takeaway from today, it's not as simple as saying, I want good windows. It's about thinking about the outcome you want to achieve with those windows and start designing for that outcome, whether it be high thermal insulation, whether it be solar control, whether it's bushfire, all of these different things that you need to design for and think about. The more thought you put into it and the more research you do to understand what solutions are out there, the better chance you're going to have of getting the outcome you want.
Mitch, do you have any last comment to make?
Yeah, I'd probably say don't believe the marketing, and make sure you check the true statistics on a window. And I mean, look at the consumer data from Agua. You know, start there. There is a lot of third-party data where it can be taken out of the hands of a manufacturer or someone trying to sell their own window. So that's what I'd say. You know, don't just believe someone because you like them. Go and check that they're telling you the truth. And then, yeah, I mean, dealing with energy assessors, I think they can be very valuable early on in the piece, rather than being surprised at the end of your design and having a flip to a more expensive window system because you're not hitting the energy rating.
Great. Harley?
I'd say, yeah, subscribe to like Renew magazine and Sanctuary magazine and learn about windows. Educate yourself about windows so that you can spot a dud window and don't buy a dud window.
That's a great point, and thanks for the Renew reference. Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of our session. A huge thanks to Mitch, Russell, and Harley. And thanks again also to our sponsors who have made these sessions possible. We hope that you join us for our next session on Tuesday next week, where the topic being discussed is doing it differently, owner builder, co-housing, and do it yourself. And don't forget to join Renew or subscribe to one of our magazines to support our work. And for a wealth more information on sustainable design and living, and just to be part of that community is really great. So follow the link in the chat to get on board. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a lovely night.